Hi there, I'm Christy Wilhelmi from Gardenerd, and there's one question I get probably more than anything else, and that question is, how often should I water, or how much should I water? And the answer, unfortunately, is always, it depends. It depends on so many factors, so let's take a look. To get started, every plant has its own watering needs, and I think that's where the question comes from. Any plant profile or garden book will tell you whether that plant has heavy, moderate, or light watering needs. And that's a good place to start. If you can find a plant profile about the thing that you're growing, start with that. And then it's time to learn a little bit about what that means for where you live. The first factor is what type of plant you're growing. Is it an annual that lives out its life cycle in a season, like an edible crop like lettuce or herbs? Or is it a perennial, like a fruit tree or a shrub or something else that comes back year after year on the same roots? The difference is perennials send down deep roots that mine for water in deep soils. Annuals have a shorter root system, and so they're going to need a lot more attention from us. A fruit tree, for example, in the first year, you may be watering it once a week. And then as it ages, it's once every other week or once a month. It depends on its age, how long it's been there, and whether or not it's growing in the ground or in a container. Most garden vegetables are annuals, meaning they live out their life cycle in one season and then they're done. They're going to need more attention and more water from us, but that still depends on your soil, so we'll get to that in a minute. But it's important to know that your root system, whether annual or perennial, is an important factor in how often and how much to water. The second factor is weather. Now, if you live inland where temperatures get up into the 90s and 100s, that's going to be a very different watering system or watering schedule than if you live on the coast where there's marine layer or coastal influence and things are cooler. It can be 20 degrees difference, 30 degrees difference between those two temperatures. So the best way to tell whether your soil is dry or not is to use some kind of moisture meter, and that could be this finger or an actual product, a moisture meter. There are moisture meters that are kind of generic and will tell you like, yeah, this is relatively moist. But if you can, buy a moisture meter that is a relative moisture meter, and that means you calibrate it to tell it what moist means. With a moisture meter that you can calibrate, you basically stick it into soil that is the ideal moisture and set the dial so that it knows that that's evenly moist. And then when you find a place that's really dry and you stick it in, it'll show that it needs to be watered. When it comes to your finger, you want to stick, this is the best tool, and it's free, right? You stick your finger in the soil all the way up to this knuckle, pull it out, and if there is dusty soil that's barely clinging to your finger, you need to water. If there is more of a clumping aggregates of soil that have moisture in it, the soil's a little darker, that means you might not need to water right now. It depends also on whether that plant is in a pot or in the ground. Like I said, in the ground, roots can reach deep for nutrients and water, but in a container, they have no choice but to rely on us for help. And of course, the smaller the container is, the more often it needs to be watered. The bigger the mass, the bigger the volume, the better it retains moisture. So when you test your soil, if it comes back dry, make sure you're watering your containers especially enough so that they don't start to wilt. The other factor that helps answer the question is, where is this plant located? Is it in partial shade? Is it in full sun? Does it have wind buffeting it? All of these conditions can affect the plant's health and how much moisture stays in the soil. If you put down mulch, the soil's going to be able to retain moisture better than if it's fully exposed to the elements. Keep these things in mind, and that will help you determine how often your plant needs to get watered. The third factor that's really important, and I should have started with this, is your soil structure. Is your soil sandy? Is it silty? or is it clay? Those are the three main categories of soil. Your soil probably falls somewhere within the matrix of that. Sandy soil loses water quickly. Clay soil holds it really well, and sometimes too well. You may end up with flooding, and plants may suffocate and die in clay soil. In sandy soil, it'll flow right through, and you may need to water more often. If you're uncertain of your soil structure, there are tests you can do where you put some soil sample in water and let it settle, and then you can see what the layers are, and that will help you determine whether you have sandy, clay, or silty soil. You probably know just by looking at it. Pick up a handful, crumble it in your hand. If it flows through your fingers, sandy. If it clumps up and doesn't break up very easily, probably clay. Now, I know this all sounds really ambiguous and that it doesn't answer the question at all. So let me give you an example. Here at Gardenerd headquarters, we're working in raised beds, which are essentially large containers. We have imported most of the soil, and we've been adding compost for years because we have very sandy soil in our native soil. We generally have to water. In the winter, I can go maybe 3 days without watering, or if it rains, maybe up to a week. But that's with rainfall. In the warmer temperatures like summer, we're watering every day or every other day depending on the plant. If it's a perennial, every other day is good. Edible perennials like tomatoes, peppers, eggplant, those can go every other day. But our shrubs and stuff out front, we water that maybe twice a week. But our tender vegetables like herbs and leafy greens, those need water every single day in the summer. I know some folks who have more clay soil and they only need to water once or twice a week. Over time, as you work with the soil you have, you will learn how it behaves. This is not something you need to know right away, but it's something you'll learn pretty quickly when you start gardening. Whether it's in native soil or potting soil, containers, or in the ground, you're going to experience what it's like to get responses from your plants and to learn from your soil. That's what gardening's all about. And I have confidence that you can do this. It may take time, but you will learn if you know what to pay attention to. So hopefully, with these 3 factors to look after and learn more about, you'll be able to figure out how often and how long you need to water your plants. To learn more about the specific watering needs of specific vegetables, you'll find that information in my book, Gardening for Geeks. You'll find information on how to treat your fruit trees in my book, Grow Your Own Mini Fruit Garden. And just for fun, read my novel, Garden Variety. Consider becoming a Patreon subscriber to support all the free stuff that we do here at Gardenerd, and you'll find, of course, lots of free information at gardenerd.com. Check it out, and happy gardening.